Hello and welcome to another special taped episode 47 of Bettin N Boozin, and covering the early pick 5 for Breeders' Cup Saturday at Santa Anita with all the preview and analysis you guys need. I am your host, Kyle Roscoe, with my co-host Noah Maher. Patrick Kuenzel is finally back from his little hiatus with Charlie Freeman. The boys are all back together. And again, guys, this is going to be a fantastic weekend. And this early sequence, while being really short and could be pretty chalky, it's still a good sequence, but I'm interested to get your guys' opinions about it. Real quick, guys, before we move on, I'm just going to go through here. If you guys are new here and you find yourself coming back on the regular and you aren't subscribed, why not? You guys are already coming back anyway. Please go below and hit subscribe. It would really help us out, and hit the like button on this video, as since this is a tape show, the more likes, the more pushes this gets out into the YouTube algorithm. So we would really appreciate if you smash that like button on this episode. Every single episode that is posted to the HHH Racing Podcast YouTube channel is all posted audio as well on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. Please go rate, review, and subscribe over on those platforms as well. Guys, if you are watching this before Wednesday at midnight, you guys are still eligible to get our Breeders' Cup Power Picks. We are covering every single Breeders' Cup race like a glove, with full write-ups, full stats, everything you need to be successful, as well as every single race we are covering like a glove with these Power Picks. And it's only $20, guys. Like, outlets are charging 40, 50, 60, 75, even $100 I've seen for their Breeders' Cup weekend package. We are charging only $20, and it will be some of the best information you will get all weekend. It will be hhhracingpodcast.com, onto our great website. And as I show it on screen right now, this is what pops up when you come to hhhracingpodcast.com. At the top here, you see click to subscribe to the Breeders' Cup only Power Picks. If you click on it, that brings you straight to it. And again, $20 you pay through PayPal using your wallet or any credit card that you guys have added on. You can always sign up for PayPal as well. It is free. hhhracingpodcast.com. And if for our normal Power Picks, very profitable. Again, we had 2.6 last year. For the entirety of what we've been doing, it's about like 260 different, almost 300 different picks now. We are still in the positive, around $2.34 ROI. That's through Patreon, patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast for those. And guys, we're not going to waste any time getting into this. This is a fantastic sequence. Although, as we can see, it might have the ability to get really chalky here. There's two really big horses in the Breeders' Cup races that we're talking about alone. So this is going to be very interesting on how, obviously we'll see it later, but how we construct our early pick 5 tickets. Going to bring up the first race right now. Of course, race 1, it is the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance Stakes. This is, of course, the aforementioned Breeders' Cup Marathon, basically going 1 mile and 5/8 on the dirt. And of course, there's one big name for those of you that know this type of division. There's only 6 horses, and there's one big name missing. And that is, of course, Next. Next had a little bit of break in his training schedule. He last worked on 10/18 and hasn't worked since. We obviously don't know for sure anything like that, but it could be a setback connections-wise. So unfortunately, we don't get to see easily the best horse in the marathon division in Next. But Siskiny is your morning line favorite for Buick and Appleby, trying the dirt for the first time at 8-5 morning line. The number 5 Salesman is your second choice for Mandela, and third choice is going to be the number 1 Time for Trouble with Castellano and Jeff Hiles. Guys, going to switch over the picks right now, and you'll see actually every single one of us is going with Siskiny. And Noah, I'm going to toss it to you over to you first. For me, it was just straight running line. This horse, figures wise, just seems to be the best. There is obviously one big question mark, though.
Yeah, the question mark is definitely the dirt. You made a good point before the show. Not really any of the family has really any dirt breeding, so definitely a question for sure. And the horse is going to be a short price. However, he did, prove that he can run over here in the States in the Belmont Gold Cup. Of course, that was on the turf. But it's Buick, it's Appleby. They're going to have a shot.
And it doesn't always translate over, Charlie, but I mean, this horse has run on synthetic over in England and has shown up there in stakes races and was second in the Wildflower Stakes at Kempton, and then again only lost by a neck in a mile and a half race at Kempton again in the Wildflower edition for 2022. I mean, we can talk about it all we can. The horse is easily the best on figures. It's just an underlying question about the dirt.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like you and Noah already covered everything on, as we'll get towards later, how strongly I feel about this horse. But look, at the end of the day, I feel like, as you touched on, there's certain horses that are always meant for these marathon races that everybody knows well. Siskiny is one of them. Again, Appleby and Buick are one of the best duos, and maybe a little less recognized for those who are a little newer to horse racing, and that maybe you mainly only focus on America. But in terms of if you look towards more the European circuit, certainly this duo is just like the Pletcher Irads and stuff like that of the world. So whenever they link up together, as Noah touched on, they always should be in for a strong chance. And I'm not really concerned about the surface change. I feel like even if there is some sort of slight dip in form, I think Siskiny doesn't have to be just as good on the turf or on the dirt as Siskiny is shown on the turf. I think honestly, anything somewhat close to that is good enough to beat this field.
But yeah, I mean, you are the only one. Actually, three of us have the exact same picks in 3-1-6. Charlie, you're the only horse that has neither of those horses anywhere. You're actually going number 4, Win the Day, and number 5, Salesman in second and third, respectively. Please expound on what you like most about those two horses.
Yeah, so for me, I think honestly, this whole field is kind of wide open after Siskiny. So for Win the Day, the main angle I took is, you see after that break, kind of started to show some regression, a dip in form after being a horse that was in the high 80s and low 90s. All of a sudden, you see an 80, 83, and 73, and you're starting to wonder what's going on with this horse. Take a solid break, comes back, puts up an 89 and a 91. Has a really nice effort last time out after being absolutely nowhere, getting bumped around at the start. Not a good break, 7 lengths off the lead, and then closed all the way up to within a length. And now you're adding more distance, which I think is what Win the Day wants. And really, the main green flags for me is if you look farther back in the past, at Keeneland and at Santa Anita, ran on the dirt and ran these farther distances and had, you look going a mile and a half at Santa Anita, lost by just a neck and ran the strongest figure this horse has ever run. So I think this might just be one of those races where the type of race it is, the track, the distance sets up nicely for Win the Day. And again, if you feel strongly about Siskiny but want some more value and don't want to go chalk, I think Win the Day is the obvious choice to consider there. And then for Salesman, again, obviously kind of the reverse way of looking at this. You would be going with the main chalk. Obviously, I would say for me, the one red flag and why I put this horse third is, as nice as it is to obviously have Flavie and Brandon have run some solid races. It's a bit concerning to only get 5-2 on a horse whose one effort on the dirt was just an 82 figure, but still has shown some nice efforts up in the turf in the past where a step forward could make Salesman competitive.
I mean, absolutely. He's going to have to take that step forward, and he's never been really this far. He's been a mile and a quarter on the turf in England and a mile and 3/16 on the synthetic, but nothing of this long of distance. So Mandela obviously sees something, and this field definitely didn't come up very strong with next out. But Patrick, I'll let you expound on the 1 and 6, and then we'll kind of move on from here. There's not too much to talk about. But number 1, Time for Trouble, was second in the Birdstone to the aforementioned next. And then just explain what you like most about the 1 and the 6.
Yeah, the one Time for Trouble, I look at the Birdstone 2 back at Saratoga losing to next. Like you hit on at the beginning, next would be a heavy favorite in this spot, and I do think Time for Trouble will hit the board in this spot just off that race alone, and has proven, going this distance and longer than a mile, specifically on the turf last out. Don't really understand that, why they went there, but I just think Time for Trouble should appreciate this trip on the dirt, and depending on how Siskiny takes to the dirt in this, I hate to call it a weaker spot, but it pretty much is what it is. And that's what I think about the 1. And then the 6, Kiss Today Goodbye. That horse, you look at the buyer speed figures, you see 92 last out, and then that dip into 30s. That there was a big excuse in that race, and I just think the horse has been running consistently well throughout time, and it just hasn't faced much. You look at Defunded and stuff like that, but that was at a shorter distance, and I'm just wondering if even the longer distance, this horse might appreciate a little bit more. And it's pretty much a home game for this horse, so we'll see in a spot where I think it could be kind of skinny on the pick 5 and pick 6
Yep.
bets, this horse could hit the board.
I mean, yeah, just in a matter of, runs a dud every now and then, but other than that, it's just really consistent in the low 90s and with a field that kind of, there's a lot of question marks and inconsistencies with a lot of these horses without next in this race. Definitely could be in the money for sure at a much better price of 5-1 than say the 5 at 5-2. Charlie, myself and Noah and Patrick are all going 3-1-6. Charlie's going 3-4-5. Guys, not too much more to talk about in that race. Let's move on to race number 2, which is a much more competitive race in the Twilight Derby, going 1 1/8 on the turf for 3-year-olds. Draws a full field of 13. Actually, in this race, with the morning line favorite being the number 6 Web Slinger for Castellano and Cassie. Second choice will be all the way to the outside, the number 12 Silver Knot for Buick and Appleby again. And then your third choice will be the number 5 Panic Alarm for the West Coast connections of John Sadler, and now Frankie Dettori picks up the ride. Guys, going to switch over the picks right now, and you'll see 3 of us are going with Web Slinger, but there's one man that is on the outside looking in, and it is the West Coast bias himself, going with Almendares for Antonio Frisu and Phil D'Amato. Noah, what would you like most about the number 8?
Yeah, well, with Almendares, a lot of times you have a horse that comes over from overseas and goes to the D'Amato barn. First time out, not often do you see that the horse is between 7 and 8-1. So that was interesting there. And the horse was definitely impressive. And then, D'Amato had enough confidence to throw him in the Del Mar Derby. But I watched that race, and he kind of made like an early and wide move going around the turn. And he kind of just didn't really have anything left. In terms of horses that were also running that race, Maltese Falcon I'm a little bit against, just because Maltese Falcon was on the rail the entire time. But just a horse, for D'Amato, who's always dangerous. And I believe Frisu had the chance to go to the 13, but he ends up staying here. So I kind of like that as well.
That is correct. Yeah, Frisu rode number 13 Watsonville for Glatt 3 times in the past. But, of course, that horse picks up Pratt, and Glatt really likes when Pratt comes over, usually picks him up. But still, that is definitely noted with Almendares. I like the horse. I have him in second, a 3-year-old gelding. But the fact of the matter is that D'Amato really had enough confidence in this horse to bring him over. It has improved off of the ship over from England coming over to the States, and double pair top. I think this horse could really take a step forward. And if not to the win, definitely consider him worth the consideration for underneath. But Charlie, Patrick, I'm actually go to you here. Number 6 Web Slinger, speed figures looks the best. Definitely is a running line horse for sure if you're interested in that. But I think number 6 Web Slinger really fits in this spot.
Yeah, this horse, one of my favorite horses out there right now. Just really appreciated what Web Slinger's done, and in some of the races that the horse has won. I really like the freshen up here. Was pretty much running every month up until the beginning of August, after that Saratoga Derby, where we saw program trading come up the rail in that spot. That was really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just Web Slinger's just been right there in like a lot of races, and I feel like kind of found a softer spot for this horse. Just hoping for the right pace setup. And like I said, should be one of the softer fields. So I'm hoping 3-1. That's fine with me. Obviously that's a soft favorite, but I think this horse is going to run really big on Saturday.
I mean, easily could get the setup as well. Although that last race he ran really well in the yielding ground, I think he definitely likes it a little more firm. So Web Slinger will get that. It's been a long 3-year-old campaign for Web Slinger, which I guess, but he has gotten a break since that race at Saratoga last in August on Whitney Day, which we were all there for, where he just missed out to program trading, which tip of the cap to the boss, of course, program trading being his top pick that day, and a power pick score. So if you're still waiting on the power picks, it's horses you give horses like program trading. But has been working at Keeneland, took the ship over earlier this week, hasn't worked since that Keeneland work, but in his best form that he'll be in, and I think he really fits in this spot. Noah, I'll move over, or sorry, Charlie, I'll move over to you here, as you have 2 horses underneath that no one has anywhere. The number 7 SEAL Team and the number 10 Maltese Falcon, who Patrick touched on a little bit. But anything more to touch on Webslinger, and then feel free to talk about your two underneath.
Yeah, so I mean, Webslinger is certainly a horse that really caught my attention. I remember watching that American Turf race, so that's what really got my attention. Is that long shot and came out of nowhere and got the job done. And then, kind of like Patrick sort of touched on, this horse has been right there, has really put in efforts where you can't really fault the horse at all, and has deserved better results than Webslinger's gotten. And I feel like this is the spot where you never want to say a horse has to win, especially if a horse as talented as Webslinger. More so feels like the horse is destined to win. It just feels like with the hard work this horse has been putting in, regardless of the pace, has shown the ability to win, whether it's colder or obviously preferring a hotter pace. And I just think if there's any sort of reasonable pace here, Webslinger should get the job done. Moving into SEAL Team, put up a best effort last time out in a fairly hot pace for a horse that likes to press. Normally that can be concerning. For me, what I kind of just like to see was this is the horse is gone, and easily the hottest pace this horse has had to deal with. And despite being a horse that likes to, again, he likes to sit right off the lead. Normally if you're a pressing type like that, they end up running out of gas unless it's a weak field. And obviously the fields weren't incredible, but still to put up a 90 figure and to show that ability to sit right behind and then go by and get the job done, for me was a pretty impressive effort. I also just like the value at 6-1 at SEAL Team. I certainly think at the very least has shown enough to be competitive. And then, for Maltese Falcon, a horse that went up against the 8 horse that you guys like on September 3rd and got the better of the horse. Again, actually did lose to SEAL Team last time out as the favorite. But again, I just think SEAL Team took a nice step forward and ran a good race. But I'm just kind of hoping Maltese Falcon can go back to that race 2 back. Where the horse did not get a good break at all, but then ended up having a very impressive effort and got within ahead of coming back to win and conclude with a very easy race and got a dream trip. So I think if Maltese Falcon can rebound to that race, could be very competitive.
I mean, absolutely. Just Patrick touched on, of course, the perfect trip scenario of that last race, or I'm sorry, the race before for Maltese Falcon. So, the point's taken, but definitely could be one if he slots in from that 10 post. No, the last horse I want to talk about real quick, of course, is the number 12 Silver Knot, who you, I, and Patrick all have in third. It almost just seems like this horse is kind of plateaued almost, like at that 85, 86 range. But, it's always the Appleby first time gelding, the ultimate equipment change. Maybe could do something for a horse that's kind of stagnated these last few races.
Yeah, it seems like we kind of thought that after we saw how impressive Silver Knot was in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, you just kind of expected the horse to have a really good 3-year-old year, and that just kind of hasn't come to fruition. Being favored in the Pennine Ridge at Belmont, granted loss to Kalick and Far Bridge is nothing to sneeze about.
Yep.
But in the Belmont Derby, kind of didn't run as well as he could have, and in the Secretariat, that race was won by Gigante, who was either between 20 and 30-1. So it just seems like this horse has been in spots where he should have most likely gotten it done, and he just hasn't done it.
Yeah, and that's the way you're going to look at it. Silver Knot at the 5-1 range is what people are going to look at. If this horse hasn't got it done in these last few, what makes you think that he'll get it done now? Obviously, Appleby really thought high of this horse because he got entered in the 2,000 guineas over at Newmarket. Obviously, didn't show up at all that day, but has come back to the States. Just hasn't run his best race, but first time gelding could be an angle to take in this race. But I mean, he always runs his competitive race, and if he can take a step forward off an equipment change, I think Silver Knot could still be an in the money horse for sure. I'm going 6-8-12, and so is Patrick. Noah's going 8-6-12, and Charlie is going 6-7-10. Guys, switching over to the first Breeders' Cup race on Saturday. It is the Breeders' Cup Big Ass Fans Dirt Mile. Got to say the sponsor. It's the best sponsor on the entire weekend. But, of course, going a mile on the dirt at Santa Anita draws a field of 9, with the borderline favorite being the best story in horse racing right now, the number 3, Cody's Wish, for Junior Alvarado, Bill Mott, Paul's aforementioned son, with Practical Move, of course. That's the one thing we have to mention, guys, is, of course, Practical Move going down with what looks like a cardiac event is the biggest. It's going to be the biggest story of this entire race. So rest in peace, of course, to Practical Move. But that definitely changes a lot of stuff just from a handicapping standpoint and, a pace scenario standpoint as well. As, we'll talk about it, but it can only really help Cody's Wish in that regard, as he has a horse that was going to come from off the pace, and now it doesn't have to, unfortunately, doesn't have to fight with that horse. But of course, condolences to the connections and everything like that with the number 2 Practical Move. Just an awful story with what looked like the comeback of a really nice horse for the Yachtine barn. But outside of that, of course, Cody's Wish is 9 to 5. Probably will not be 9 to 5 anymore. Probably wouldn't even have been on the day, even if Practical Move was still with us. But the number 6, the second choice is the number 5 Charge It Now for Velasquez and Pletcher, and third choice is shared between Algiers and Zozos. Guys, switching over the picks right now, you see all of us are going with number 3 Cody's Wish, which again, this spot just seems to have gotten a lot easier for him. Patrick, I'll go to you first. Cody's Wish, again, we talk about it, the defending champion of the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, and everyone was trying to find ways to play against him in this race because people, the last 2 haven't been his race or whatever. But he's looked like, just without anything else, he's looked like an absolute bullet in the mornings at Santa Anita, and now it looks to have everything to go his way if he wants it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what makes me feel more confident about Cody too is that, runs the Whitney, just didn't run his race that day. You can make up the excuse, for the distance, didn't want that, sure. But, then comes back in the Vosburg and, wins that race and, had to work for it. And I like that just because, people are going to see that race and, see who the horse faced and be like, well, I'm going to question whether this horse should be the favorite in this spot or be a heavy favorite. And I just think, Cody comes out of that and now is working incredible. He's going to be ready to go, should have the pace to set up, and should give us another thrill like he did in the Met Mile of just that sweeping kick coming home, and it's just going to pick up the pieces in big fashion.
I mean, if he returns to that Met Mile race, I mean, he wins this race by
6,
yeah. 7. I mean,
just do half of that and I'll be happy.
I mean, just like I said, we'll talk about it, but we don't think we have to mention any more about Cody. Everyone knows Cody's story, the amazing story. Everyone knows what the horse can do. And of course, the defending champion in this race would be set up for a really good exit if he can win the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile for the second time. But Noah, I'll go over to you here because you have the number 7, who I have in second, which is Algiers for the Christopher Barn and James Doyle. I thought, there was issues with the fact that this horse wanted to go to Aqueduct, but of course it got rain, so they weren't confident about the surface. So then the horse shipped up the Woodbine, ran second, but he had excuses in that race, and I think Algiers could be sitting on a pretty big one.
Yeah, Algiers definitely did have some excuses in that race at Woodbine. When I watched it, he had some trouble and then he finally got out. But I feel like he should have. That was kind of his race to win.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you.
Going up against a horse like Cody, it just really wasn't super impressive. But that being said, I mean, I think the horse has a great shot to beat everybody else in this field, but I mean, it's Cody's Wish we're talking here. So I
get it. Yeah, I mean, your point's definitely taken, but if there's one threat for me, to this horse and Cody, obviously it is Algiers. Was second to Ushba Tesoro, who's going to be one of the main contenders in the Breeders' Cup Classic this year. Cuts back to the mile where last time he was at this mile in Maidan in a Group 2, he won by 6.5. I mean, Algiers is no sleep. I would not sleep anywhere on Algiers because like I said, if there's one horse that's going to have a say for Cody, it's going to be Algiers. But Charlie, I'll go to you here. You'll talk real quick about the number 4 Zozos, who actually could have a nice pace scenario for him in this spot, and then Charge It, who you have in third, who none of us have anywhere, and I think we're good to move on.
Yeah. So, I mean, my angle with Zozos is pretty straightforward, as you were touching on. I mean, obviously the bullet works are nice. It's always great to have Drew with Brad Cox. But for me, it's, again, I've talked about this angle plenty of times. If you have a strong favorite horse that you believe in, you want to look for a conflicting style. Obviously, Cody's Wish is going to want to be sitting, way at the back and then fly by late. So if you're looking for any sort of horse that can really compete or give Cody's Wish trouble, you look for Zozos. Last time out, showed the ability, even though I've touched on My hesitancy to pick speed horses in distance races, you can see, has been consistently been running high 90s or 100 figures and has been able to get on that lead and maintain that lead throughout. I think we'll be able to go set the pace, and the question is just going to be, can the horse hang on, and how much difficulty will the horse have setting the pace? And obviously, if they can slow him down enough, could be dangerous. And then with Charge It, again, similar angle. You're getting Johnny V, Pletcher Trainee. Obviously, the 295 is not that it's any sort of bad figure, but obviously you would prefer to be closer to that 102 and 106 when this horse was right with Cody's Wish rather than losing by a good amount to Cody's Wish. But certainly, it's capable of a bounce back effort, and you've also kind of seen in the past has kind of that versatility to either sit, a little off the pace or push a little more forwardly. So I think Charge It's another one where, depending on the pace setup, could kind of play into a favorable enough trip to at least be in the money.
Hold on. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you on Charge It. Charge It was the one that people were talking about going to the Classic. And actually was surprising that he actually moved to the dirt mile, at least for me. Because obviously he won the Suburban at 1.25 miles. So I thought Todd was always going to go to the Classic, but interesting move to put him in the dirt mile and take the blinkers off for Todd. Of course, people, I'm also a believer in this, making equipment change in the biggest race of the year for him. So there's always something to bring up. And I'm looking up something right now, guys, that yeah, he did. Wow. Okay. Well, that takes a lot of stuff out. We're just learned live here on this podcast that Algiers is actually scratching from the dirt mile, which is a big change, I think, in my opinion, which that takes away one of my, that takes this field down to 7 horses, guys.
Yeah.
And that just, again, that's just another thing that helps Cody. But yeah, we learned about that live, guys. Like that was, Patrick sent it in our chat that we have to the side here. That's, yeah. There's 4 stretches that I'll just say right now, as we learned about it. Ekoro Neo and the Juvenile is out, which is that Japanese runner, I believe. Liam's Journey in the Juvenile turf, and then Get Smokin' in the Breeders' Cup turf, along with Algiers. Guys, this race, this, that's 2 main contenders away from Cody now. This just sets up perfectly for him in this race. So that takes obviously a lot of our out.
His odds now are going to be.
He's definitely easily under.
I also do think it helps Zozos a little bit.
Yeah,
it's just like another horse that would be towards the front. I will say, as much as obviously this is all helping Cody, the one counter argument you can make if you're trying to look for a reason to go against Cody is, again, these are things that are helping Zozos, where if this pace gets cold enough, anything could happen. We talk about it all the time. If you slow it down absurdly enough, and all of a sudden you're complaining that there's some dead pace and the closer's nothing to close into, I think we all agree that Cody should win. But if you are looking for who else besides Cody could benefit from this, certainly Zozos.
Yeah, absolutely. I have Zozos now in second. I think Zozos is the pace of the race, and if he can really show out, I think, and get a little brave, I think Zozos is definitely dangerous in this race. But obviously, again, that wipes out Noah and I picks, but I'm not going to force him to make another pick. I'll go 3-4 ? I guess. Parley's going 3-4-5. Patrick's going 3-6-4, and then Noah's also 3-4 with the scratch of Algiers. Switching over to race number 4, guys. In the Filly and Mare turf, this race, guys, is another absolute barn burner. With going 1.25 miles on the turf, a full field of 12. As of now, still a full field of 12, with a morning line favorite being the number 6 in Spiral for Dettori and John Gosden. Second choice is Worm Heart, Ryan Moore, and Aiden O'Brien. I don't know. Sorry about that feedback, guys. I don't know whose mic that was coming through, and then third choice is, of course, the number 1 in Italian for Rosario and Chad Brown. Guys, switching over to our picks right now, and there's actually a pretty good spread here. So Patrick's going with in Italian. Noah and Charlie are both going with Warm Heart, and I have in Spiral on top. Patrick, I'll let you talk about in Italian first. Look, we all know what in Italian can do. She's extremely talented. Will go out to the lead and never look back. And hopefully in this race, if she doesn't take as much pace pressure as she did last time, she's always dangerous.
Yeah, and that's what, kind of my thinking is in this spot. Listen, I get there's horses in here just as talented as her. maybe even make the case, if not more talented. But I just think, I think she's going to be game in this spot. Got beat by a nose two back, got beat by a head last out. And I lost to both horses that are in the Chad Brown barn. And I just think, something tells me that an Italian's going to run big on Saturday. And, like you said, it's going to go to the lead and it's just never going to look back. And, we're all going to look at this race. And I hate to say maybe these fractions slow up a little bit and Italian could slow it up because obviously, she doesn't even need to really slow it up too much. I mean, if it's anything above, I think 23.5, she's a winner and she's on the lead. So I just always been a big fan of hers. And I think in this spot, she is set up for a big race at 4-1, which I would love to get.
I mean, yeah. I mean, look, she could easily run her race. A big number last time, just losing to Gina Romantica. But I mean, in the miles, she's going a little bit longer than she really ever has. The longest she ran was last year on the Filly and Mare Turf, which was mile and 3/16 at Keeneland, but still only losing by a head to an absolute charging Tuesday. I mean, look, she's extremely talented. There's not much to say about her. She's always going to the lead, and if she doesn't take pressure, even if she does take a little pressure, always look out for an Italian. But no, I'll go to you second here. Warm Heart, the Aidan O'Brien runner, and as heard on this HHH Racing podcast, if you haven't watched it yet, go watch it. The interview with Aidan O'Brien. I believe it's episode 301. I believe of the Flagship show. Please go watch that. It's almost at 7,000 views now. So thank you to everyone out there who has watched it already. But Warm Heart, he was extremely high on her. And so, I mean, look, she's extremely talented after winning in both York and in Longchamp.
Yeah, she is really talented. And I would go on and say that this is probably one of my more, confident plays of the Breeders' Cup weekend. Just that last race at Longchamp was just super impressive. If you want to pull up that race, Kyle,
absolutely,
the audience to watch.
Well, actually, we can't, but
you can't.
No, because it's.
I'll tell you what happens.
Yep, please.
So Warm Heart, stumbles pretty badly at the start, and she's kind of down on the inside, and when they hit the top of the stretch, she tips out. And she comes with a run, and there's a horse to her outside by the name of Mellow, who kind of comes even with her. And you can kind of see Warm Heart kind of look to her left and, identify that the horse is there. And once she does, she kind of quickly flicks her head back to the right and, just keeps on going, fighting to the wire and gets up by a neck. A lot of times you see these Euros, they kind of fly by, and that's, they're kind of a little one-dimensional, but the fact that, she was able to have that late kick, but otherwise, hold off others, that to me was, super impressive. And that's why I really like this filly.
Look, and the obvious question mark in which was actually asked of Aidan O'Brien. So again, go watch that show. Is the distance. She's been running at 1.5 miles these last 4 races, and has won 3 of them. 1.25 miles, she did well at Leopardstown, although that was at her maiden ranks. So the distance is going to be the question mark for Warm Heart. But Aidan, I mean, not without giving too much away, she's extremely talented. And it's for me, if it's not an Italian, it's easily a 2-horse race between these 2 Euros. I have Inspiral on top, guys, and there's really not much else to say. She's just been absolutely super impressive, especially in these last 2. She's never been over 1 mile. So again, we're talking about the distance angle. Inspiral is another one to look for, but at the start of 1.25 miles, if I bring up the map, you can actually see it starts on that downhill course. So at the bottom, which is basically flat, but it is it's a quicker 1.25 miles as they are going down that downhill turf course to start. So I don't think this distance is necessarily a hurt at all for Inspiral. It's of course a question mark, but I don't think, especially after seeing her win those last 2, I'm extremely interested in Inspiral. And if she's anywhere near that 5-2, which I'm not sure she will be, but there could be a little bit of emptying for me on Inspiral. And I think the Frankie show could be alive and well at Santa Anita. I'm really interested in Inspiral on top. The only horse else we have to talk about, Patrick, is number 9, who you have in second, Didia, who is a very, very nice mare. coming over from the East Coast for the last race in the Rodeo Drive, where she ran very well.
Yeah, she's run very well recently. She got beaten at New York, actually, which is two back, which is kind of interesting. In June, um, ran huge, so had a late kick in that spot. I remember even telling the boss that day, "Oh my gosh, Didier ran gigantic," um, and then comes back in the Rodeo Drive on that turf course that she'll be running on Saturday, and ran fantastic, and I hit pretty much won with ease and looked really impressive. And I just think she's just an impressive horse, and I'm gonna play her underneath in spots because I don't know if she's talented enough as the others that you talked about, Kyle, and the one that I have on top. But I'm just a big fan of hers, and I think she'll hit the board on Saturday in a fun race.
Yeah, I mean, look, this race there's so many different ways you can go. Charlie, I'll let you have the final say here. Obviously, we talked about a lot of the horses here, but you also have Warm Heart on top. Same picks as Noah, actually, which is 2-6-1. Anything you want to mention before we move on?
No, I think you guys honestly completely.
Whoa, okay. All right. The mic, wow, Jesus, Charlie, those are horrible. I'm gonna be honest, those are horrible. You gotta change that real quick, my man. The AirPods died, so Ohio State man's trying to get something together. And I apologize for whatever the heck that was. My gosh. But either way, we all talked about these horses, so we'll just move on from the Philly Mare Turf. An extremely interesting race for sure. I'm going 6-1-2. Both Charlie and Noah are going 2-6-1, and Patrick's going 1-9-6. You guys can't make it. Come on, guys. That's unbelievable. I don't even know. Yeah, no kidding. I agree. But we'll move on, guys. The Philly and Mare Sprint, which is the last race of course, the early pick 5, going 7 furlongs on the dirt with a big morning line favorite in the defending champion, Goodnight Olive, at 6-5. Second choice will be the number 7, a very live runner for Asmussen Society at 5-2. Third choice being Matarea, number 4, at 6-1 for Brad Cox and Flavian Pratt. Guys, switching over to the picks right now, and you'll actually see 3 of us are going with the bad post, Goodnight Olive, but Patrick.
I get that every so often. I get the 3 Patricks.
The 3 Patricks.
Oh no,
you did something wrong, but maybe you didn't. Society, she's very live on Saturday, I think.
Yeah, and the reason why I like those last 2 races, I mean, those just really impressive. Now you look at who she's faced, and you kind of wonder. But I just think if this horse breaks well, I know this horse has speed, other speed. But I just think if she can somehow get the lead, I think she's gonna run a huge race. And Asmussen's went all over the place with this horse, and is running big races. And has been beat by pretty good horses. Has lost to Goodnight Olive, but has beat Matarea. And I just get this feeling Society is going to run a big spot, and you hit on with Goodnight Olive that post position kind of scares me a little bit. Has won in that spot in the past, but I just wonder if the speed holds up in this spot, if Goodnight Olive is going to be able to catch it from the inside.
Yeah, and look, she will be forwardly placed, but the one thing I'd like about Goodnight Olive is I don't think it hurts her too much. Doesn't have too much speed directly to her outside. Clearly unhinged is fast, but not sure if she's going to go right to the lead. Ida will be there. I think Goodnight Olive, Noah, I'll go to you next, obviously. I'm not sure how you felt, but I think, Goodnight Olive could just sit a really nice pocket trip. Obviously, it will be where she'll be at the top of the stretch, but the post is hindering for sure, but I don't know if it should scare you too much.
Yeah, well, I actually just had a little interest in the post myself. So I looked it up and found sprinting in the 1 hole on the dirt is actually 9 for 43 the last month at Santa Anita. So that's 21%, which is really not bad at all. I just, in terms of race flow, I just have a really hard time seeing Society, go to the lead and not get some kind of pressure. Clearly Unhinged is pretty fast. Ida's definitely fast. Matarea is not slow. I'm not really sure what the Japanese will do, and Yaguri's not slow either. So I just think, in terms of race flow, setup, she's going to get it. Just in case, though, I've got both of them on my pick 5.
Yeah, and this will be a common theme when we get to our tickets, but that's a good stat, honestly. I'm really, 9 for 43, obviously the last month being their fall meet at Santa Anita. So, and that's full sprinting. That's not, going 7 for sure, but like I said, I don't know if it's going to be too much of a hindrance. I think it's going to be what a lot of people are going to focus on. I think society is going to drop in odds as well because of that. And any higher I can get on Goodnight Olive, the better. So I'm definitely interested there as well. Charlie, I'm going to let you try. And if you destroy our fans' ears again, I think you might be 2 strikes and out. But you have the number 4 Matarea in third, and so does Noah. Patrick and I don't have the horse anywhere. So what'd you like most? He's praying right there. What'd you like most about Matarea?
Should I whisper?
Oh, he's good. We're good. All right,
It's
go for it,
okay?
Charlie. Yeah, you're good.
Oh, thank God. All right. I don't know what's happening at this point. My computer's praying on my downfall. So Matarea, I mean, look, the horse obviously beat Goodnight Olive before. Now I know that just wasn't the best effort from Goodnight Olive. Since then wasn't nearly as competitive and also lost to Society by a good amount. But look, for me, I feel like this is clearly a 2-horse race between Goodnight Olive and Society, and you kind of just stand with one or the other. And I was just looking for which other horse has shown any sort of promise. And you've seen those solid figures in the high 90s and how well this horse has still responded, even when there is other speed and there is a hot pace. So I just felt like the 4 made the most compelling argument to kind of be that second tier after the top 2.
No, you also have the horse in third. Is that kind of the way you saw it as well?
Yeah, that was kind of the way I saw it. She's definitely one that can sit off for sure, but she can also be really tactical. Interesting enough, Pratt chooses here instead of Uguri, which I like. And the horse has had some time off. Again, I most likely a 2-horse race, but somebody to look at underneath for sure.
Yeah, I've never been compelled on Matarea, which is why I don't have her anywhere. Patrick, I'm not sure how you felt, and I'll let you go into Kirsten Bosch, who you have in third. But it's just, I mean, she's run good numbers, but being close to a pace to a horse who's going to basically be the same in Goodnight Olive, from a tactical standpoint, I'm just not sure. Like I said, I've just never been sold on her form.
Yeah, this is one of those like reverse key plays pretty much. I think this horse could just pick up all the pieces if stuff does break down. If Goodnight Olive, if they think that Goodnight Olive needs to be more forwardly placed, just questioning the pace because, I know Noah hit on it. Like the 4 Matarea, like if this horse really wants any chance, in my opinion, has to go. And if the horse doesn't, that's why I just think it's going to set up for Society. But, I'm playing against my top pick pretty much with, the 5 in this spot, just hoping something breaks down.
Well, yeah, and then this is your horse. We always try to find a horse. If something does, something insane happens, you look for a horse to pick up the pieces. And Kirsten Bosch underneath could definitely be a play for, the famous HHH reverse key try. Absolutely. Yes. I have number 9 Uguri in third. And
we own the copyrights to that, by the way. The boss owns the copyrights to that.
The boss owns the copyrights. Absolutely. But Uguri is the only horse. I mean, ran a very good race last time against Wicked Halo. Just from a tactical standpoint, I like that she's a little more forwardly placed in a race that might not have as much pace pressure as it looks like on paper. And she's improving 4-year-old. I mean, if she runs a mid 95, could definitely be in the mix. But I agree with the rest of the guys. This could be basically a 2-horse race between Goodnight Olive and Society. But there's just there's a lot of different ways you can go in this sequence, guys. And we'll go to our tickets here in a second. It either has the opportunity to be very chalky or it could blow up. And there's a lot of different ways that it can. And obviously this race is turned on its head a little bit with Algiers getting taken out of the dirt mile, who that affects my ticket for sure, as I was looking for a horse to actually, if Cody does lose, I was looking for a horse to stay alive in the pick 5 per se. But Charlie, I'll go to you. Or yeah, you know what, Charlie? Since you're the nuts one out of everyone, and you like to play, you're basically playing what's equivalent to a $5 pick 5 for the.
He's pressing up. He's going to hit it multiple times.
Yep. And so, Charlie, the pick 5 of the century, ladies and gentlemen, 12 for your 50 cents. Going 3 with 6, 7, 10, with 3, with 1, 2, 6, 9, with 1, 7 for 50 cents, only $12. Obviously, Charlie, this is a ticket you'd play for 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And I mean, look, even if it comes chalk, play it 6 times. You could make some good money on a day like the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, we always talk about how you have to just stand in what you believe in sometimes. And if you feel like this is a sequence, as you touched on before, that has some certainly exciting races, but even now with more scratches, it's becoming more and more chalky. Why not just stick with what you think and, not get overly creative and make an expensive ticket? Make a ticket that can fit on a strong play a few times over. For me, starting the first race, I know Siskany's never run on the dirt, but I trust that they pointed towards this spot, and especially with next out, know that this is the clear horse to beat. And I think even with a slight drop in form, should win. Race 2, I think, is one of the tougher races for sure. But ultimately, as much as I believe in Web Slinger and is probably one of my stronger plays for that whole day, still have to respect that this is a huge field with a bunch of competitive horses. So wanted to include Seal Team, who had a nice effort last time out, and also Maltese Falcon, who's been right there. Cody's Wish, I already liked as a single with everybody in the race, and now obviously with 2 of the major, I'd say 3 or 4 contenders scratching, there won't be much value, but if you're trying to cut back costs, good way to just single a horse that looks like a clear winner. Going into race 4, I think this is probably the most wide open. Really feels like it really is just between An Italian, Warm Heart, and Inspirial, as we kind of touched on. But just in case, as Patrick kind of touched on, Diddy is a horse I've liked and bet on in the past, and has been able to outperform, what's been expected. So wanted to throw that a horse in there as well. And then the last race for me, I really do feel like it's kind of just between Goodnight Olive and Society, and which one of them is going to be able to actually stay up front and finish the job. So kind of was able to find a lot of races where I could get skinny.
He's muted.
But
Who's got the audio issues now?
Dude, you should have heard yourself. You're going to hear yourself.
I wish I could have.
Look, I love skinny tickets, and the fact they're playing a $12 ticket here in a sequence that has the opportunity to be chalky is definitely the best way. You go with your best opinions, play it multiple times, and if it does come chalky, you still have the ability to make some money. Charlie, good luck with your pick 5. Noah, kind of the mid-level. You're in that $50 range. 1, 3, 6 with 6, 7, 8, 10, 12. Singling Cody's Wish with 1, 2, 6 with 1, 7. Noah, talk about your ticket.
Yeah, so I probably did a couple of things that you shouldn't do when you're trying to construct tickets. But the ultimate goal is to try and build some bankroll so you can make some wagers on the later Saturday Breeders' Cup races. So in the first race, which is a 6-horse field, I've got 3 of them. The 1, 3, and 6. I got Charlie's Siskany and then 2 others. In the second race, which I think is the Hollywood Derby, I've got my top 3, the 6, 8, and 12, and then I've also got the 7 Seal Team and the 10 Maltese Falcon. In the third race, just singling Cody with a couple scratches, not too much to talk about there. Fourth race, I think it's as simple as the 2 Euros and an Italian in case she gets loose, and then I've got Goodnight Olive and Society in the last.
Look, I don't disagree with you by any means, and really that's we're pretty similar in our ticket. It's but obviously you'll see when that comes up. So I love it every way. Noah, good luck with your ticket. Patrick, big spender. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 6 with 6, 8 with 3 with 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10 with 1, 4, 5, 7 for 112. Patrick, talk about your ticket.
Yeah, it's Breeders' Cup. I'm not going to mess around. No, the first leg, I'm not that confident in the 3. Siskany, by far the best horse, but just not confident. So I'm going to spread in that spot. In race 2, I was close to singling Web Slinger. I'm a big fan. But I also D8's strong in that spot. So I'm going to include. And then in the third race, got a single Cody. Big shot in there. Should win. And then in the fourth, I think that race is wide open. All just giant horses. Very impressive race. And I think any one of the, 7 that I have can win. Yep. And then in the fifth, the 4 that I have, I didn't want to include the 5 from a price standpoint, but I'm just afraid if I don't, and that horse does pick up all the pieces, and I lose on a long shot that I somewhat liked, I'd be upset. So I went 4 in that spot for a $112 ticket.
Well, I'll tell you what, it blows up the ticket if it does. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
So, Patrick, good luck with your ticket. I'm just a little less. I have 108. So I'm going 1, 3, 6, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 with 3, 4, with 1, 2, 6, with 1, 7. And I know what you guys are saying. The ticket construction is not the best. But the thing is that if either Cody's Wish or Goodnight Olive do not get the job done, I want to be alive in this pick 5 because it will, maybe not with Society necessarily, but if Cody's Wish loses, this ticket blows up. This pick 5 blows up because, I mean, basically everyone and their mother is going to try and single Cody's Wish, especially now with all the scratches. I have 1, 3, 6 in the first. I don't think you need necessarily anybody else. The second race, guys, I think is the most wide open. There's a lot of different horses that can. If Webslinger just wins, he's the best. Then that's the way it is. But SEAL Team, Elman Dares, when we talked about Maltese Falcon, I have in there, Silver Knots, all these different horses have the opportunity to run a big one. So I'm looking there to spread 3, 4. I put Zozos in there with the prospective pace structure. I think Zozos has a chance to run away with it if he does end up clearing. 1, 2, 6. Noah said it exactly. The €2 and an Italian. I don't think Didia would be the only other one I would add in there, but I don't think you necessarily need anyone else. The €2 look good. And of course, if an Italian gets away. And then I have Goodnight Olive and Society in there. It's one of those two for me. And if, like I said, if anyone loses, this thing could really blow up. So I don't think the $108 ticket is too much for this spot. But guys, that is going to wrap up our discussion on the early pick 5 for Saturday Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita. For my co-hosts Noah Maher and Patrick Kuenzel and Charlie Freeman, this has been your host Kyle Roscoe in episode 47 of Bettin N Boozin. Crush your bets this entire weekend at Santa Anita as it's poised to be a big one. Thank you guys, everyone. Have a good day.